questions! Hello! Welcome to another Dreadlocks question and answer video where I answer your questions. First question this week is from DarkestHoursxxo, and Darkest Hours asks, what method did you use when you started dreading your hair? Originally, my hair was held in its sections using the backcomb method. There is no backcombed hair left, it was somewhere down here. But that is how things were originally started. If you are interested in knowing more about how I started my dreadlocks, you can find it covered in more detail in my frequently asked questions video, which I will link in the description. Holly Bright asks, I have month-old dreads. I use the twist and rip method, backcombed at the top and then crocheted. I also put extensions in, but whenever I wash my hair, the link, which is fairly tight, gets loose and starts to come out along with my natural hair. I want to wash them, but I have been avoiding so far for this reason. Okay, so young dreadlocks, whether you twist and rip, backcomb, crochet, they're still going to be young dreadlocks. They might look tightened together, especially if you've crocheted them. They will look strong and have shape and look like mature dreads. But mature dreads are formed over really long periods of time. Hairs knotting into hairs, knotting into hairs. And so even though you can get young dreadlocks to look like they're strong and together, they will not have the same strength that a mature dreadlock would have. And that means that while it may look nice and together once you've created them and maintained them, after a little while, especially when you start to wash them, they'll go from this tight structure to bleh. You can maintain them back together if you want, but it's still not going to make up for the weeks and months that they are going to need to properly form and tighten on their own. It'll just be sort of a temporary stopgap to keep them looking nice. So since they're young and since they're soft, they are not going to be all that good for attaching things to, as you can see when you attach extensions to young dreads. Now there are many different types of extensions that can be attached in different ways, so I don't want to blanket cover the entire topic. But I don't personally recommend attaching extensions to brand new dreadlocks. Obviously it's possible to do, but given the choice, I recommend waiting until the dreadlocks have gained some structure and strength of their own. If you attach them onto brand new dreads, as you've seen, it kind of gets soft and difficult to get them to hold on. And while they can stay on by themselves, other people may find that you have to keep working on them to keep them attached. Again, it depends on the extension and how they were attached and who attached them, etc. My personal advice is to wait until the dreadlocks have formed a bit of strength on their own. The tips will usually strengthen up faster without the extension on, so I do believe it is better to wait a little while, wait for the dreadlocks to form up, strengthen, get used to having dreadlocks before jumping in to having long extended dreadlocks. And then once you're comfortable with the dreadlocks, once they've got a bit of strength, then you can attach extensions to them. They will be stronger, they will be easier to attach, and they will be less likely to have problems later. But if you've already attached extensions and you're having problems, you will just have to kind of continue working on it. Over time the dreadlocks will get stronger and they will be able to hold the extensions easier. I definitely wouldn't avoid washing them just for the sake of keeping the extensions looking nice, because keeping the dreadlocks nice and clean, that's going to allow them to mature faster, and that means they're going to get stronger faster, and that means that the extensions will be able to hold on better sooner. Garrett Smith asks, I have had dreads for 8 months and I have a few lumps and loops. Will palm rolling help get these out? I read your blog, so I know that you personally don't use wax, but will it help with the lumps to use the wax? Lumps, bumps and loops, they form as the dreadlocks shrink up, so it is a sign that you can see that the dreadlocks are shrinking and tightening. But because this shrinking and tightening does not always happen all that evenly, some sides get pushed out and pulled in, you get lumps and bumps and loops forming. Some people find that palm rolling the dreadlocks as they are drying can help encourage the dreadlocks to form smoother. It can encourage the shrinking and compressing to be a bit more even, because as the dreadlocks have been cleaned and have the oils removed and they dry, and then there's lots of interaction with the drying, that is when a lot of the tightening can actually happen, even though the actual washing process can make your hair look a bit frizzier. So incorporating some palm rolling into the drying process can help encourage that compression, that tightening, to be a bit more even across the whole dread, and therefore make the lumps and bumps slightly less common. However, it's by no means a guarantee that you're not going to get lumps, bumps and loops. Lumps, bumps and loops that have already formed, you may be able to get those to be smoothed out a little bit, but generally if you have lumpy, bumpy, loopy dreads, they will always be slightly lumpy, bumpy and loopy. Over time the hair around the lumps, bumps, loops will also tighten and make them slightly less noticeable, and they will get squeezed out a bit, but they are unlikely to ever be perfectly smooth by themselves. I am certainly not an advocate of wax. I would not recommend you using wax on your dreadlocks for anything. Technically you would be able to use it to stick down a loop, but it is just going to be tacking the loop onto the dreadlock. It's not going to be knotting the loop into the dreadlock, so it hasn't really helped other than to make it look visually smoother, give the impression the dreadlocks are smoother, but really it's just stuck things in, whereas you want things to be knotted in. And I really don't think that the benefit of having some loops stuck down is really going to outweigh the downsides of having wax in your hair. If you were determined to remove the lumps, bumps and loops, the most popular way of doing it would be to crochet them in. That will actually pull the lumps, bumps and loops into the dreadlock, won't just stick them down, it will pull them in and permanently remove them. Maisie Squire 999 asks, my dreads seem to be tightening everywhere except the roots. I have about 3 inches of normal hair until the actual dread starts on some of them. Is there any way I can encourage my roots to dread up? Roots can often be the last thing to get knotted up tight. The hair is constantly growing out, so there's always going to be new hair there that isn't knotted up. The hair is also going to be picking up oils from your scalp, and oily hair does not knot as well as clean hair. And the hair at the roots is also not masked by any twist and rip or back comb, it's just sort of raw hair on display. Having loose roots is entirely normal. Now, while there are ways that can make the root look tighter, more together, I do not personally recommend working on the root. When you go into the root and try and force knots to form, you can often end up undoing more than you actually put in and setting the process back. And of course, if you damage any hairs at the roots, then those hairs are going to be permanently damaged and the dread is going to be permanently weakened and thinned out there. I honestly believe it is best to just leave the roots as they are. It might not look so nice when they're growing out. However, once they've been left long enough for the roots to mature, get tightened by themselves, they will be locked up permanently forever, and it's better to just let that process take place rather than constantly work, and keep setting the process back. Sayuri Mei Murasaki asks, how does a crochet hook damage dreads? Now, crochet hooking and dreadlocks is a much debated topic and something that I hope to cover in more detail in its own dedicated video in the future, but specifically the damage that can be caused using a crochet hook. When you maintain a dreadlock using crochet hook, you're pushing the needle, the crochet hook, through the dreadlock, grabbing loose hair, pulling it back in. Anytime that you push anything into a dreadlock, anytime that you pull anything out of a dreadlock, there is going to be a risk of damage. The key word being risk. You know, there's a risk. There's no guarantee that you're going to break a hair, but there's also no guarantee that you're not going to break a hair. You can reduce the risk by being slow and careful and by using smaller and smaller needles, but there is always going to be some degree of risk. The damage that can be caused is hair breakage, and if you break a hair inside a dreadlock, it is permanently broken. There's no way to fix it, and over time that can lead to weakening of the dreadlock and thinning. Now, while breaking one hair is going to be pretty much unnoticeable when there's thousands and thousands of hairs, over time, dreadlocks are normally a long-term deal, so over time, the more often the crochet hook is pushed in, pulled out of the dreadlock, the more chance of breaking more hairs, and so over time it can lead to enough hairs being broken for it to be noticeable, for it to lead to the dreadlock thinning, and worst case scenario, breaking off. Now, there are many people out there who maintain their dreadlocks regularly with a crochet hook and experience no problems. However, there are also people who have experienced the problems, who have used the crochet hook just like anyone else and ended up with thinning and weakening, and you don't notice any problems right at the start because it takes time for the breakages to build up. But by the time you notice that the dreadlock's starting to thin, starting to weaken, there's absolutely nothing you can do. And when you go into crochet hooking dreadlocks, you can never guarantee whether you're going to be one of the people who experiences no issues or whether you're going to end up with problems down the line. It is something that you have to decide on your own, whether the benefits of having neater dreadlocks is worth the possibility of them being damaged further down the line. It's something that you have to decide for yourself. The pros and cons are going to stack up differently for different people. Those were my questions for this week. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me to be answered in a dreadlocks question and answer video, you can either leave it down in the comment section below. Please write question at the start of your question, or you can join the Facebook page at facebook.com/lazydreads, where each week I will ask for questions to be posted, and whichever question gets the most likes by the time that I come around to film my next Q&A, that question will get answered. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, useful, enjoyable, informative, any or all of the above, you can click the like button. If you'd like to see more from me in the future, you can of course subscribe. If you're looking for dreadlocks information, tips, guides, questions being answered, you can always find all my content on lazydreads.com. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Farewell!